Why even develop games anymore when we can just re-release the same game instead?
Oh my god, it's genius.
And so we did. Fans are creating modded content out of love for our games? Cease and desist. Fans are trying to make their own graphical improvements to our games? Cease and desist. Fans are trying to add music that we have removed back to our games? You already damn know what to do. Cease and fucking desist.
Should we treat our fans to a great remake on the 20th anniversary?
Ha 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 ha. Fucking fuck off, you cunt. Duh 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 duh. Fuck it, this will do.
Grand Theft Auto. The series so immersive, its most recent release will actually leave you feeling as if you've been robbed while you watch as they drive off with your hard-earned cash. But it hasn't always been this way, has it? See, it almost feels like we're living in some strange alternative timeline where Rockstar are the ones releasing joyless cash grabs and EA are the ones bringing out actually heartfelt remakes, though I suppose the credit goes to BioWare for that one. EA, you're not getting off that easy. But look, here we are. We haven't seen a new Grand Theft Auto since 2013 and we probably won't even get an announcement until the 10-year mark, while we're simultaneously looking at the 5th game's 4th re-release. I don't think I'm alone in wondering how on earth we ended up here, though I think before spending too much time on the negatives, I think it's important to try and break down what made this series so special in the first place. So, it all began in 2001, and while I'm aware the first game did come out in 1997, the series we all know and recognise only really began to take form in the 3rd release, and what a release it was. This shit genuinely changed the world for a lot of people, and it was just incredible having this sandbox that you could both drive around in and also just wreak havoc in, along with a story that, while isn't exactly an exemplary piece of literature, but does do a good enough job of setting the format going forward, as well as just giving the player enough to keep them interested. And the depressing smoggy atmosphere is actually a great use of limitations they had with render distances. You've got to understand that at its time, this was all a technical marvel, and Rockstar would continue to keep figuratively changing the game and ultimately redefining what it means to be an open world shooter. That's the thing with these games. Each release would keep resetting the standard with features all across the board that could be considered way ahead of their time. Let's just look at San Andreas, that on top of being able to fully customize CJ's clothes and hair, you could completely customize certain cars, and the game even had a weight loss and gain system and the whole gang dynamic too. It would eventually become a shame to see even the more modern releases lacking in some of these features, but to me it just goes to show that even in 2004, the level of care they were putting in was simply unparalleled. An example of this being in the settings that they develop. See, I've already touched on the metaphorical set of smokers' lungs you roam around in the 3rd game, but their next project would arguably end up being their most iconic, with the 80s nostalgia trip of Vice City, then being followed up by San Andreas. Somehow Rockstar would keep making these incredible maps that are rich with personality. In a 3-year radius, they came up with Liberty City, Vice City, and San Andreas. In retrospect, it's actually kind of a shame we only have 3 distinct locations in the franchise, but in all fairness, it's hardly like they didn't do the job. All 3 locations would continue to pop up throughout the series in their different variations, which might have actually been one of their better moves going forward. See, having both a 3D version and an HD version is actually a great way to keep future releases fresh, and ultimately enabled Rockstar to make the best versions of their creations going forward, rather than being held back by pre-established locations. You can only imagine how clunky GTA 4 would have been if they had just used the GTA 3 version of the map. I'd say the best examples of their work are definitely evident in their more recent releases, especially looking at Red Dead 2. It's clear to see that they're not just remaining on brand, but they're continuing to push the standard forward. Now, while this definitely isn't their best map, I think for me, my favourite would definitely be GTA 4's rendition of Liberty City. A strong evolution from the thick air of GTA 3, this version genuinely feels alive and conveys a much more refined atmosphere of, well, despair. I feel like the details are a lot more subtle in this game compared to the 3rd, but the environment is used to further channel the themes that are evident throughout the story of a betrayed soldier in search of the American dream, only to learn that there's no such thing. GTA 5's version of San Andreas is actually a lot more optimistic, but also comes from a place of conveying subtle and not so subtle themes. In contrast to the much more honest negativity of Liberty City, the optimism of GTA 5's map often comes across as a front to hide how dark the place and narrative really is, somewhat reminiscent of the actual location of Hollywood and Los Angeles. Though I've started to go a little bit off track here. But speaking of tracks, the music is undeniably a fundamental part of what makes Grand Theft Auto so memorable. I mean, I can think back to a song from literally every game that's been playing on the radio, whether it's when I'm flying across the map or even if it's just from GTA 5's lobby menu. The music is always a huge part of the experience, which makes it pretty heartbreaking when specific tracks get removed from the original games, but more on that later. These soundtracks play a huge role in giving each game their identity, as well as just adding to the immersion of the time periods each games were set in, and that's without even mentioning the theme songs. I mean, Jesus Christ, each and every one of these are able to express the tones and themes of the games perfectly. I think my personal favourite has to be GTA 4's, I mean, just listen to it, but I mean, they're all so good, it's really hard to compare them. There's genuinely not a bad theme song across the series. But here's the thing though, it's not just the music. The sound in general is so iconic that even the main menu sounds are able to effectively communicate the game's identity, to the point that there was actually an understandable outrage when they only used the San Andreas menu sounds in the definitive edition. The sound of these games is important, so important that I can honestly say growing up playing San Andreas has arguably formed my entire music taste. For some reason I just have this unexplainable nostalgia for the music from that era, whether it's 80s rap, pop or even bloody country music. And the only explanation I have for being so drawn to all of these genres is all the years I spent in my adolescence playing this game. So I keep using the word iconic like this is a hidden Xperia video, but these are good reasons for doing so. See, the next contributing factor to the series' success would undeniably be its spectacular artwork. This topic honestly deserves a video on its own because this is something I actually know how to talk about, but to touch on it briefly, Rockstar's branding and identity, specifically looking at GTA's branding, it's clear that they were able to nail the formula all the way back in 2001. Simply fine-tuning the artistic style for each individual release, their strategy for branding across the whole series is more or less flawless. Everybody knows what a Grand Theft Auto game looks like, and everybody can recognize these characters, or at the very least the style, to the point where it's going to be impossible for other franchises to emulate without public backlash for a very long time. The artists and designers at Rockstar have been able to create something that is undeniably theirs to the point where it's not just specific to GTA anymore. You can clearly see the style blending and evolving to fit their other IP, and they've clearly nailed it. Not only does each IP definitively stand out on their own, but the individual releases each have their own take and feel that ultimately give Rockstar a huge catalogue of games that both look and play amazing, and ultimately makes them a great way to decorate your collection. Plus, getting a free poster was always sick and an excellent way of free advertising. To be fair, the series is pretty funny. I mean, I don't really laugh out loud at the jokes and Easter eggs they plant all over this series, but that humorous XL definitely often comes out. I just have an appreciation for how much there is. Especially in GTA 4, whereby in contrast to the serious and bleak setting there's all of these visual gags of varying subtlety. Granted, I'm sure some of the humour throughout the series is definitely not aged as well as others, but an important part of GTA has always been its willingness to push the boundaries, and sometimes create a shocking experience. The thing is, when you play GTA, you don't go into it expecting it to be an actual representation of reality. You're expecting this piss take. That's literally what it is, just a complete mockery of everything, and it does it well. Though, as you can imagine, this obviously did lead to some controversies. That being said though, I think these same controversies did actually add to what made the series so great. What other game series do you know that was in the news causing such a shitstorm against politicians and the media? The whole series pretty much stands as a celebration of that victory we had when video game violence was at risk. It was a pretty crazy time seeing your favourite game series on the news, with all this shit surrounding it, and while it never really amounted to much, it made being a fan of the series quite an interesting experience. Especially as a kid seeing all of this. I mean, I suppose nostalgia definitely plays into it, which is actually a good segue into the next topic. See, I was literally 1 when GTA 3 came out, so these games have literally always been a big part of my life. I literally would have been a toddler looking at the box art of Vice City just thinking the colours look nice, so it's not hard to say my judgment's a bit clouded here. I mean, just owning a copy of the newest GTA was a huge part of the social experience growing up, and then when I couldn't get an Xbox 360 until 2011, this definitely left me out considerably. The thing is, I had no idea what I was missing either. I think it was 2010 when I was around my friend's house playing GTA 4 for the first time, and that shit genuinely changed my life. I could not fucking believe how good it was. Like, I was always so excited to get the new Xbox, but holy shit, at that point, I literally needed it. I don't think I'd really experienced hype to that degree before, and this would be one of the rare cases where that unhealthy amount of hype would actually be delivered, and then the same thing would actually happen again with GTA 5. It's incredible how they just kept releasing banger after banger. Being a fan of the series became so rewarding, and then we even got story expansions in the form of episodes from Liberty City. It was very difficult to imagine a scenario where we wouldn't get another GTA for fucking 10 years. And I'm sure there's a lot more too, but without turning this into an hour-long retrospective of every game, I think that just about wraps up my thoughts on what makes this series so special. So, how did it all go wrong?
Can we please work on developing games?
Don't you worry, once we have re-released GTA 5 for a 7th time, we have plans for a future Grand Theft Auto installment for you to develop.
You really mean it?
Of course, we have just collaborated with Dr. Dre for a brand new Grand Theft Auto Online update.
Oh god no please.
Introducing brand new vehicles, weapons and clothing for players to spend money on.
We want to make new games, maybe update Red Dead Online.
New Grand Theft Auto 5 microtransactions. Ray tracing update for GTA 5. 120 player lobbies. Look how much money we have made already. Look how little money this made in comparison. And just look at EA, they've been doing this for decades and fans still willingly give them billions. Why would we not make every penny we can?
And well, why wouldn't they? In an age where video games are the new Hollywood, we've been seeing the consequences of that very matter for a long time now, and this here is definitely one of them. Rockstar are undeniably one of the most talented developers out there. I don't think that could ever come into question here, but that's not where the problem really lies, and we all know it. If you're this far into the video, you know all about their parent company Take-Two Interactive and how they're no doubt the driving force behind all of this negativity surrounding the games over the last decade. The thing is, as soon as they realised how monetizable microtransactions were, it's like they changed directions and never turned around since. And the thing is, it's not just with Grand Theft Auto or even Rockstar games. These issues have been plaguing the industry for quite simply way too long now, and are evident all over the place to the point where it's actually a pleasant surprise to see a modern AAA release not riddled with microtransactions in order to have any sense of progression or customization. Long gone are the days where a game would launch actually finished with content you can earn in-game, which makes this whole issue of Rockstar so much worse to me. We know full well how talented these people are, and that they can not only set the standard but have continued to do so, which is why when we see even Rockstar now endorsing the leeching of their own content, it just goes to show how much of a bad turn this industry has taken. This now feels much less like an art form or an escape from reality than it does feel like a genuinely soulless exercise now, where literally everything is just an advert for microtransactions. I went on a bit of a tangent there, but I guess fundamentally Grand Theft Auto as a series, much like other franchises, could be considered a victim of its own success. The hype that everyone has for the next game is honestly unparalleled, to the point where GTA 6 at this point has attained myth status, and Rockstar have been bombarded daily with demands probably since GTA 5 first dropped, which definitely leaves Rockstar in a bit of a pickle here. With how long it takes to make these games and how much money they're expected to bring in, it does pose the question for whether Rockstar will ever be able to reach its previous heights ever again. I mean sure, Red Dead 2 was a gorgeous game, but comparing it to GTA 5's revenue, it hasn't done nearly as well, which is definitely going to force the executives to be making some pretty informed decisions for what their developers should be making. And when they do eventually bring out their next installment, I think we can be fairly certain that it will be the last GTA we see for another 20 years or so, which at that point, I mean sure, they might still be very talented developers, but I doubt that will clear that shadow of corporate greed that has fallen over the whole thing, which is all quite ironic given Rockstar's cynical take on society as portrayed throughout their games. Now, I've barely mentioned Grand Theft Auto, the trilogy, the definitive edition, mainly because that shit has hurt me, and to go into that topic in a way that actually does it justice requires its own video, but just look at the state of it. What were they actually thinking here? And what sort of a name is that? I mean, GTA TTTDE? Jesus Christ. Now, I've got a lot of love for these games, but right now I'm in a pretty bitter place when it comes to them. I was 13 when GTA 5 released, and now I'm turning 22, and in fairness, they've made 5 releases since then, but only one of them is actually a new game. The shit honestly takes the piss. Rockstar are meant to be the ones setting the standard here, and now they're the ones enabling the worst trends we've seen in gaming, and that's what the problem is here. I wanted this to have more of a point to it, like an actually well-rounded conclusion, but the only real conclusion I can come to here is that as soon as they realised how much money they could make without trying, they simply leapt at the opportunity. In an industry dominated by suits and executives, you could probably argue that it was inevitable, because it probably was. It literally happens to them all, but it doesn't make it any less depressing. But look, at least Red Dead 2 was amazing, for the most part. And like someone addicted to crack, I'd still probably buy the new Rockstar game over something I actually need, like food. And I guess that's probably what also adds to the problem. Much like the issue with FIFA fans, we simply can't help but just give them our money, which is why I'm glad they put the new San Andreas remaster on Game Pass, so I could at least experience that horror firsthand before giving them a penny of my money. Now, will GTA 6 live up to the hype? It's hard to say. They've clearly been working hard on something, and looking at how minimal their releases are these days, you could at least suggest that they're probably not crunching their employees like they used to, so at least there's that. I guess now I just find myself in a position of just having to accept that this is now the way it is, and that the old days of Rockstar dropping frequent releases are now long gone. I just wish they made it a little bit less obvious how greedy they and the executives are, but I guess greed is what this all boils down to, and in my opinion is the sole contributing factor to why this series just isn't what it used to be, and probably will never be again. I guess that's all I've got for you. If you enjoyed, do what you can to feed the algorithm. I've got a bunch of different videos planned, ranging from more retrospectives, reviews, and just general thoughts of both games, movies, and just entertainment in general. I'm still trying to work a lot of things out here, but if you have any feedback, just let me know in the comments. I'll definitely be interested to hear it. Until then, I have been Mingus, and thanks for watching. Take it easy.
Make sure you also subscribe. I'm being serious. Do you know how long these take?
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Grand Theft Auto, a series so immersive its most recent release will actually leave you feeling as if you've been...
Oh, fuck off.